Modcast. I'm Geoff Ketchum, joined by the usual cast and crew, Anwar, Alex, Jason, here to talk about post-signing day, the day after National Signing Day 2. Glad to have Alex with us. He was in Mobile earlier this week for the Senior Bowl, so we'll get some thoughts from him on the Senior Bowl. We haven't had a chance to pick his brain on that yet, but obviously most of the focus will be on what happened yesterday. Devon Campbell announcing for the Longhorns and putting a cherry on top of a really nice Sunday for the Texas football program on signing day. And, you know, more than anything else, we get a chance to kind of reflect back on what Steve Sarkeesian said. Freudian slip if there ever was one. Steve Sarkeesian said on National Signing Day 2, he talked yesterday late in the afternoon, and we didn't really react to it because it didn't make a lot of sense to do a big old video only to turn around and to go live at 9:30 the next morning. So, fellas, as everybody piles in, by the way, Trey Sean, just what's up? He said, hey, Jeff, might as well give you a shout out. Everybody do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, do all those things. Engage in the chat. We will be taking a lot of questions. We'll be super interactive today. We're not doing a draft or anything like that. So glad to have everybody involved. And do your part. Help us get to 11,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. We're up to 10,867. If you're hanging out right now, just click on the subscribe button. It's literally right there in front of you. Sorry, this one kind of cracked me up. I'm sorry. I did not mean to trigger your PTSD with the Tom Herman comment. Fellas, we will just start off recapping kind of our big picture thoughts the day after National Signing Day 2. Not a lot of activity. What activity did take place was the addition of a five-star offensive lineman that I think is probably, well, statistically, right, like in terms of Rivals metrics, he's the highest rated Rivals offensive lineman in the 20-year history of Rivals rankings that Texas has ever signed. But there was also the comments from Sarkeesian yesterday, a lot of program discussion, Gary Patterson, the new coaches, the new players. So there's a lot of different directions where we can go with this. Anwar, I'll start with you. You were there. You got your questions in. You were interactive with Sarkeesian. The next day, the thing about yesterday that's still top of the mind today is what?
First of all, the interesting part about yesterday was there really wasn't a lot of media members there. I think the timing of the day, it was definitely scarce. So being able to actually get in multiple questions was actually kind of a good thing, to be quite honest with you. Honestly, there was a few different things that stood out. I think the big thing, obviously, Ketch, is when I asked about like Gary Patterson and what kind of relationship that he really wants Patterson to have. And I thought he did a really good job of talking it up and talking up what, he tried to do the comparison of, Alabama, Nick Saban and those guys hiring former coaches to, come on and help and give that kind of input. And, essentially almost made it seem like he didn't really see it as a threat, but really as an added benefit. And then taught them almost, he had, as he described it, Catch, kind of like, this is like having a head coach who's going to be almost his eyes and ears when he's not around. And so kind of knowing like that's going to be almost is basically his right-hand man, a guy who will have the opportunity to, make pitches and meetings, and he may not have the final say, but it looks like he'll actually have a voice, which is one of the things that we wanted to know. And then, of course, him addressing how, Pete Kwiatkowski will be able to lean on him and kind of, get advice. And then, of course, I don't know if you saw on Twitter, but, Pete K tweets out something that says iron sharpens iron not too long after the press conference. So, it's always been the Gary Patterson thing. I thought was probably, Catch, for me, the biggest and most interesting thing. There was a lot of other little things, but if you ask for the biggest one, his explanation of it is kind of what, was the big thing for me yesterday.
Jason, same question.
Yeah, I thought the Patterson stuff was interesting. Like Almar said, I thought it was interesting. He said, hey, man, Gary Patterson gets this perception in the media, but he's kind of different than what maybe is portrayed in the media, just kind of this hard outer shell. He's maybe not like that. But when he said that comment that Almar referenced, he said, hey, we'll all lean on Gary Patterson they'll give us ideas, and we'll figure out, what to do and what not to do with it. I'm thinking, oh, how's that going to go over? Gary Patterson says you should do this, 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 and this. And they're like, nope. See you. We're not going to do any of that. So, the dynamics will be interesting. Sark, to me, and Anwar, you deal with him more than the rest of us, of course, but he doesn't seem like a guy that has a major ego. I think he will be able to take input from Patterson and anybody else. He seems to me like the type that will take that, and some coaches may take that as, oh, you're kind of overstepping your bounds. You're kind of showing me up a little bit. I don't think Sark has that type of mentality. So I think it's a marriage that can work. I mean, he referenced at Alabama, I think he said, Anwar, didn't he say like they had like 6 or 7 former head coaches in 1 year, like when he was there in 1 year. And I'm like, that's crazy, man. But hey, it makes sense. There wasn't a lot of earth-shattering developments. We got some injury updates. We knew about Malik Murphy, obviously O'Mary, and trying to get back to healthy. So Texas still needs him. It sounds like he's going to be
limited. Alexis as well.
Jaden Alexis as well, of course. But it doesn't sound like none of those guys are going to be ready for the spring. I'm like, man, Troy O'Mary again. I mean, when is that dude ever going to get healthy? So I thought it was interesting, and wasn't a huge recruiting conversation like you'd expect. I mean, times have changed. I mean, there just wasn't a lot to talk about yesterday. And Anwar, you said there weren't many media members there. Everybody was probably at HEB and Walmart, because I think I saw half of Austin when I went to Walmart yesterday afternoon.
Alex, I'll ask you the same question. I know yesterday was a big travel day for you, and you were still on the back end of your Senior Bowl experience, but obviously watching from afar the events from yesterday. And I know you're such a big Devon Campbell fan that it probably starts there for you. You haven't really had a chance all week in front of the Orangebloods Nation to, reiterate just how big of a signing that is. I don't mean to put words in your mouth and lead you in a direction, but if that's your primary area of focus, I would totally understand.
Yeah, and I watched just that, I didn't get travel yesterday is wacky, man, but I got in just like, I feel like the last man sliding into home base, coming in at like 10 o'clock last night, like as the board was just lighting up, the arrivals were just lighting up with cancellations. So I think I'd have been stuck in Mobile for a few days had I stayed. I watched Sarkeesian's press conference this morning, but I was almost finished it. One thing is, I think we're gonna have to start. We're gonna have to make. Are we gonna have to make changes and start calling him DJ Campbell now? Is that the thing? Because we've called him Devon Campbell the whole time. Does he prefer to be called DJ? Because that's what Coach called him. That's what he's
always gone by both. I mean, you can call him either, I think. So.
Okay. Well, man, Devon Campbell, DJ Campbell, whatever. He is. I thought that it was interesting whenever they asked Coach Sark about. I'm not sure who. It might have been Anwar. It was hard to tell at the beginning who was asking questions, but I think somebody asked one along the lines very early on about whether or not these offensive linemen were going to be in line to possibly be starters early on, if they were going to, if he could see that happening. And Sark, of course, wasn't going to be committal and hand anybody a job, but he definitely, he said what we all know. He's like, kind of like, you can tell he's kind of thinking like, yeah, well, have you seen what we have? And have you seen these guys? Like, we're not putting any cap on these dudes as far as, who comes in and who plays, despite the fact that it is hard as a young offensive lineman to come in and get playing time. And to me, that's just going to be the most interesting thing. Campbell's going to start once he get it's the question with Campbell isn't just it isn't if, it's where, where he's going to start. I thought it was interesting that Sarkeesian said probably to a lot of Orangebloods members chagrin, saying he identified him as a tackle with versatility to play inside at guard. So to me, it's just a question of where Campbell's going to play, whether it'll be a tackle or whether it'll be a guard. I think that'll be a big indictment on what the staff thinks about Christian Jones, Andre Carrick, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll find out about that. But dude, I mean, I think that by the end of next season, there's going to be probably 3 of these freshmen playing on this offensive line. So it's going to be it's probably the most fascinating thing to watch and to monitor in a year of fascinating developments around you have a brand new quarterback to this program that came here through this, circuitous route. It's like this big star. And it's almost like the offensive line stuff with these young guys. is even more of a topic. And the only other thing I'll say is the safety stuff. I cut off the press conference right as he was getting into it, but you guys can tell me, did he say Anthony Cook's going to be like he's going to move?
Yes, he did.
So I didn't he didn't finish the answer when I had to join the Modcast, but that to me was interesting too, because that answer is a big question at safety. It also takes one of your best players on defense last year and changes the position for him. I find it kind of intriguing, and I also find it intriguing for what it means at the nickel spot for some of these new guys that are. I mean, there are going to be players that are new players coming into this program that are going to be competing at the nickel because everybody who did play at the nickel behind Anthony Cook last year is now gone. So
does that mean Ryan Watts is a nickel candidate? I mean,
I would think, for sure. I would think
almost like they're penciling him in already. It would seem, because I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Jaron Thompson played a ton of nickel last year, but it's like, I mean, you can't take it from safety.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the safety numbers that are in such trouble. So, and
Jamison, they slide him in. I don't know. That's going to be interesting. Yeah, but
I mean, and then what about Brooks? Like, there's going to be a bunch of these dudes who they're going to look at. So that's another kind of interesting development from yesterday, just from a personnel standpoint.
No, I totally agree with you, Alex. I mentioned that in our Slack channel as it was happening. Like, guess we need to move Anthony Cook in the scholarship board from cornerback to safety. And, they can always slide him back to nickel, right? Like, if he were to lose the job, his fallback is, that he can perform in this other role really well. I think it goes onward to the larger point that just like you talked with the offensive line, all really in quarterback as well. Like, he went in to talk about how all of the quarterbacks were in different phases of their career and that Hudson was going to be a third-year guy and second year in the system. Kind of the bottom line is I think every position on the team, other than like Bijan and Xavier Worthy and a couple of other guys, it's open. And if you're a youngster and you're the best guy, it seemed like he made a point yesterday to say, we're not going to put a cap on how high we'll move you up the depth chart. But by the same token, he also, I thought, went out of his way to mention, he gave Jordan Whittington a really big vote of confidence, I thought, yesterday, and saying, hey, that was a huge loss for us in the context of adding Nair at wide receiver and talking about the offense. So, as we head to the spring, I think every kid in that program, no matter what grade classification they are on, they know I need to be on my game. And I think that will be one of the themes of this offseason. If you don't get your shit together, if you don't find the light switch and flick it on, if you're one of those if you're Andre Carrick, it's now or never, because Sarkeesian is bringing his guys in. And in most cases, they're super talented guys with really high ceilings, and you don't want to get passed up by a younger player, or you might as well just enter the portal.
Well, yeah, because Ketch, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're Steve Sarkeesian, the guys that you're holding, who are the incumbents, are the guys that are part of a 5-7 record. So, I mean, at that point, what are you holding on to? If you're going to try to take the next step, you might as well go and develop your guys, the guys that you evaluated, the guys that you saw the film for, the guys that in the living rooms that you sat in. You remember, Ketch, last year, Steve Sarkeesian kind of went into a little bit of a story about, recruiting and how hard it was inheriting a team where he didn't sit in the living rooms of all the families. And I forget which athlete he did, but he talked about going to that small town. Brandon Thompson, right? And he talked about basically there was one stoplight in the town, but then he said as a result of that, he understood, okay, in this guy's transition, when he gets to UT, these are the things that he's going to need in order to, help him succeed, be comfortable, all this other type of stuff. Whereas the guys he inherited didn't really know that. So, when you've got that going in and that his mindset going in, if it ends up, Jason, you've talked about this before, like if it ends up being a tie, then of course Sarkeesian is going to go with his guy, is going to be the younger guy, because at the end of the day, he's got some guys who are incumbents that are good, but I don't think any of us are going to stand on the table for many of the incumbents and say that guy has to start. We'll stand on it for a few, but not for enough. So you're right. If these guys don't get their act together, the one thing I keep thinking about, Catch, and then again, I don't know if it's off the table, but I still keep flashing back to year 2 when Charlie decided to go youth movement and just said, screw it. I'll take all my lumps with these guys and hope for the best in the future. It might be a tough pill, might be a tough pill to swallow and a hard sell, but ultimately, if it's close, that could be the route.
And typically, people want to see young. You know what I mean? Like the most popular guy on campus is always the backup quarterback. That's like the thing in the NFL. But
not this year.
What's that?
Not this year.
But typically in college football, it's always the young guys. It's, how many Jatavian Sanders questions did we get during the season? It didn't really matter what else was going on. It was like, let's see our shiny new toy get on the field. And so I think this is a class where, if Kelvin Banks doesn't play a lot in the opener, we'll get a lot of questions like, when are we going to see Kelvin Banks? How's Kelvin Banks? Same thing with DJ Campbell. I think you'll see on the defensive side of the ball with Justice Finkley and a number of guys. When are those guys going to get in the lineup? So on one hand, traditionally, it's like a sign of waving the white flag a little bit. Well, the record doesn't matter a ton because we're going to blood these guys in. It is a delicate line that I think they have to straddle Anwar going next season is just the concept of we want to win as many games as possible. We want to develop young guys. We don't want to lose games because we're developing young guys, but we don't want to finish the season not having developed young guys. But man, we got to win a bunch of games. That's the job, though. I guess that's why you get paid $5 million a year to figure out how to juggle those questions.
And I think it's
Jason,
different.
I wanted to
real quick. I think it's different now than even when Charlie did it with the transfer portal. You don't get that second year kind of throwaway year. Like, hey, we're just going to gradually build. No, man, people want to win and win right away. You can't say we're throwing youth out there. We're going to take our lumps this year. We know it. No, man, people want to win and win immediately. They're saying, hey, you brought in this, hot shot quarterback and you brought in receivers and DBs and whatever else. I mean, I just don't think you have that. You can have that mindset anymore. Like, we're going to take our lumps with some of these young guys. You better be putting those young guys in with the mindset we're going to win with those young guys. Because I think people have higher expectations for quicker turnarounds nowadays.
Anwar reminds me of, I think one of the more interesting conversation pieces we had on the live signing day show was with Mike Farrell. And this exact conversation piece popped up. And, he was like, if they don't win some games, he said if they went 5-7 again or 4-8, that Sarkeesian would lose his job. I weirdly, boy, the hot seat would be immense if you followed 5-7 with 5-7 or 4-8. But the bigger piece of the conversation it's like the little secret in the room that I think we all know, but it's weird to talk about out loud, is Sarkeesian really does have 3 years. It's Quinn Ewers, unless something changed with Quinn Ewers. If Quinn Ewers got, knock on wood, hurt or something that truly changed how you would view the long-term plan, it does feel like, boy, this year is this year, but by the end of 2023, there's got to be something tangible that's occurred because maybe Quinn Ewers is out the door and there's a less than 24-month window with Ewers that you might have where you've got to, I think, knock out some results.
Yeah, it's a drop the mic moment, right?
Sorry.
You didn't address it to anybody.
I did. I said Anwar when we were talking to Farrell yesterday.
My bad.
I was just talking about the conversation that we had with Farrell about how at the end of the day, the bottom line is this reality that the transfer portal changes the way you view how quickly a coach has to be good.
Because just at the end of the day, like you said, it's free agency. So, in the NFL, if you miss on the draft, you use free agency as the mechanism to fill up and make up for your mistakes. That's what free agency is for. And usually the teams that miss that left tackle or right tackle or linebacker, those are the ones who overspend in free agency. Alex can attest to this because that's just what it's there for. Now, but those who draft well, don't necessarily have to go in the free agent market. So the teams that don't do well, the teams that are struggling, like a Texas, there's no need to say, to your point, Jason, too. Don't need to say like 3 or 4 years down the line we're growing and develop. You can go right now. I mean, no one's looking at USC right now and saying, man, that team's going to need about 3 years to get off the ground, 4 years. It's going to take some time for Lincoln Riley to bring in his guys and grow and develop them. They're saying, look, yeah, they weren't that great last year, but look at all the transfer portal guys that he brought in. They're expecting, USC to compete for a title in year one. And if
especially when you bring in a quarterback on, where that even escalates things even quicker.
Correct. And guess what? Texas brought in a quarterback. Now,
it's the same thing.
Yeah,
both guys bring in those quarterbacks, and it's on.
I mean, hot shot quarterbacks, not just quarterbacks. Big time.
You brought in a 5-star who would be one of the top 2. From a portal rankings perspective, it's probably Caleb and Quinn, and you can debate which probably Caleb just because he was more of an incumbent, but you bring in probably the second best. Like, yeah, people, you think Texas fans, are going to go in August going to say, well, we'll be happy with 7 as we continue and grow down this path, or they're going to be like, damn it, man. Catch in our comments yesterday, people were talking about Texas beating Alabama. Like, that's just. As preposterous as it sounds, like that's just where we're at because of the portal.
Not like it was possible. They were saying it's going to happen. Texas is going to beat Alabama.
Hey, real quick, let's go through some questions because we've had a bunch early on. And Jason, this got asked in the chat about 40. I know you've probably seen it about 45 times. So I'm just going to bring it on up. I don't know why it matters, but how long did y'all know about DJ Campbell? Was he already signed?
I keep wondering why people keep asking it. Like, why does it matter? He signed, right? Why does it matter?
It doesn't matter. And listen, sometimes things and you can't say them. You know what is interesting? DJ Campbell yesterday, and people close to him, Cole Patterson, Orangebloods is not on this Modcast right now, but he'll have some stuff in the war room. He went and covered his announcement. DJ swears he did not sign until yesterday. So you're asking, why does it matter? Why is DJ kind of saying what most people believe isn't true? When I was down in Orlando at the Under Armour All-American game, it was pretty apparent that he had committed and signed. You had the Sark After Dark tweet on Friday night, right? That was not Larry Turner Gooden, the only other option it could have been. The fact, I kind of dropped hints on Orangebloods. I kept saying, like, it's a big deal that he's not taking any visits and he's not doing any in-home visits. You know why he's not taking visits and he's not doing in-home visits? He couldn't. He was signed. I mean, I wanted to say it without saying it, but I'm like, guys, this is a big deal. He's not even doing in-home visits. Well, why not? Because he's signed.
Jason, to that point, I kept waiting for a mystery in-home visit to pop up so that we would go, okay, well, I guess he didn't sign. And now he is going to sign, because if he's a signed player and he's still meeting with coaches, you couldn't do that. And obviously, he treated the last 6 weeks of his recruitment different than most guys that waited until yesterday to do their thing.
Most of those guys are still taking official visits, which DJ could have done. They're doing in-home visits, this, that, and the other. There was none of that because it's all off the table once you sign. The other key tell on this was, I think it was the night, whatever it was, Friday, the December 17th or 18th, the last day of that early signing window. And we get the Sark After Dark tweet, like on, I think it was right before midnight. And everybody's going crazy. Who is it? Is it Campbell? Is it Larry Turner Gooden? Is it this? Is it that? The next day I texted a source who's always been great to me about stuff. And I asked him, I said, DJ in the boat? And I got the emoji like zip. So I was like, okay, that's not a confirmation, but it's kind of a confirmation, right? So, I was never told directly he did sign in December, but it was, when you put the pieces together, it was pretty apparent starting, I guess it was when I talked to DJ in January. That was my big question was him. Are you going to take other visits? Are you going to do in-home visits? And I kind of had assumed he'd already signed me. When he told me no, he's not doing it anymore, I'm like, okay, it's pretty obvious at that point. So,
hey, Alex, I want to go to you with this next question. It's kind of an interesting over and under on starting true freshmen this season. Also, what's a healthy number to depend on true freshmen from your perspective?
Okay. Well, so DJ Campbell will start at some point in the season. Probably Kelvin Banks will start. Neto will probably start at some point this season. Terrence Brooks will probably. I mean, Will Stone. I'll have more about Will Stone in the war room because I talked to Dicker about him at the Senior Bowl. So Will Stone probably, but Will Stone thinks he has to fight for a scholarship against. Like, I'll have more about that in the war room, and then I'd be interested to see what you guys think about BJ Allen. Because if he comes into the fold as a guy, maybe at that nickel. So how many is that? That's 1, 2, 3 by the 4. I think by the end of the season, and I'm probably forgetting somebody here.
Well, I mean, what are they going to do at the edge position if
what about
get a transfer?
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if Justice Finkley will start, but I think he'll probably be a two. Him or Tap will probably be two deep considerations. I think that who else is there? So Burke, I think that he's more developed. I love Burke long term, but feel like he's a lot more developmental, and I don't think that Zach Swanson will come in completely ready. So for me, I would say maybe Finkley, maybe Tap, but those are both kind of maybes for two deep contributors. Maybe can we just call them one? Maybe just like edge guy, like one of those two, maybe could be starting by the end. 3 offensive linemen and 2 defensive guys, maybe in the same mold as that the 2 edge rushers that we talked about, sort of in that nickel kind of safety, ether. They could come into play. And there've been questions on the side too about JD Coffey, and none of this, the safety, of course, and none of this is any kind of indictment on Coffey and stuff. I actually wrote a column about him last week saying I feel like he's probably the player that could stand to break out next year that absolutely nobody is talking about, just because of the fact for last year only 36 snaps on defense, but he came in. People forget what a stud recruit he was, and when he was on the field, he had difference-making speed. He had a different level of speed, a different gear than any safety that Texas has. We know from his high school film he can come downhill. He's a hard hitter. Also, his snaps per production caused last year, even though it was a small sample, but of all players with over 30 snaps last season, the only player that was more productive on a per snap basis on the whole defense was Byron Murphy. So just for the JD Coffey questions, like we're definitely not leaving him out of the conversation, and we've had that conversation a whole lot in the forums over there on Orangebloods. But as far as the true freshman, that would be my answer. For like 3 to 7, but with 2 of those. But with 4 of those 7 being guys like Tapp and Finkley, Allen, and Brooks, where I could see either of them kind of mixing in.
I'm taking the under on that, by the way.
Well, yeah, you're Mr. Conservative.
Well, Justin Blaylock didn't start as a true freshman.
He redshirted.
Yeah,
did you see the offensive line last year, Jason? Because I watched.
I did, but I think three of those. Listen, I know they're talented; they're ultra talented, but 3 of them. What 3 are you taking out that you're going to have 3 freshman offensive line start? Unless somebody gets injured and you say, okay, we're going to throw a freshman in there for a game or 2. Well, that changes things. But if we're talking guys who actually truly win starting positions and hold on to them, I don't think you're going to see 3. It's not out of the question. I get it.
It'll be disappointing if they don't. If these guys can't beat out Christian Jones,
are you going to bench?
Andre Carrick, Christian Jones,
one.
And then and then somebody needs to push Hayden Connor.
I don't think.
And honestly, it would probably be easier for somebody to push Jake Majors.
I don't know, multi-year starter at center. And I don't even know who that would be. It'd be
sure.
Connor Robertson.
Do you consider him is it a multi-year starter? Considering that he started what two games the year before, so I'd call him basically.
Well, he'll be going into his second year as a starter,
right? Right.
I mean, the only true center they've got is projected to be Connor Robertson. I don't think Connor's going to push Jake Majors this year. So,
well, I'm just what I'm saying is from a production standpoint. Whenever Hayden Connor was on the field last year, he actually graded out a little bit better than Jake Majors did. Smaller sample, but yeah, I mean, if these guys can't come in and push Christian Jones, they can't push Andre Carrick. God bless him. I love him. He was great as a freshman. I mean, if you just look at the disruption he allowed last season, it was among the bottom 5 seasons.
I get it, but
of like
offensive line
65 of these
experience means a lot, man. Just to those coaches, more than any other position, experience means a lot along offensive line. I'm not saying you're not going to be right. So I would, if I'm betting, I would take the under. Would it shock me if 3 of them ended up starting? No, it wouldn't shock me, but I would bet the under on 3 of them starting.
I think the under is probably the safer bet, just because common sense, and it's just like that doesn't. I can see people in the comments and what they like. I mean, it's probably not ideal to have 3 true freshmen on the offensive line, but this takes into consideration 2 things. The Texas offensive line last year was miserable, and this offensive line class is fantastic, and so it's like extraordinary situations sometimes that call for extraordinary means, and DJ Campbell's going to start. I don't see how Neto is not going to find a way to start. Kelvin Banks, they're going to try and push him in. Now he'll need time to develop and everything. And then I find it impossible to believe there's not going to be one of these guys that just comes in and just surprise. I mean, people forget how good Cam Williams is.
I said this yesterday, Alex. You weren't here, but I said Cam Williams may be as college ready as any of these offensive linemen they signed. I mean,
it'll be interesting. I think that Jason's bet is probably right, as far as an under with those guys. But I mean, to say you couldn't see it happening, I feel is just wild, just considering the circumstances.
Hey guys, coming out of literally this conversation leads into kind of what I wanted to do, and to everybody in the chat, I promise we'll get back to your questions. I've been like putting stars next to questions that I think are good ones, so hang in there. We will get back to your questions. We're going to talk Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies here in a little bit as well, because obviously. Not just because they signed the number 1 class in the country and kind of were chief competitors with Texas for recruiting players inside the state of Texas, but his comments about NIL and kind of being challenged about how they acquired their class, I thought was a really interesting component of signing day. But I wanted to look at the Texas roster. I'm looking at the scholarship board right now. And let's just go position by position for a second, because I think this is a really interesting conversation piece. We'll get to offensive line in a little bit, but Carrick and, a guy like Hookfin or Hayden Connor, when we talk about players who didn't have big roles a season ago, J.D. Coffey falling into that category in the defensive side of the ball. I'm curious who we think has a chance to step into a role of more responsibility and maybe takes a step, and guys that maybe have got to figure out where they fit on this roster. If we go quarterback, real quickly, Charles Wright, there's nothing. Nobody is of the opinion that guy's moving to second or first string in the next 12 months, right?
No.
So, okay.
Absolutely.
Without injuries or transfers or both of those combined, yeah.
Running back, it's the first 2 positions are hard to spot guys here, but it is. I should point out Jonathan Brooks. Anybody think that Brooks is a guy that takes a much bigger role or could
eventually, but not next year unless people get hurt? Boy, he's good though, man. He's good.
I love Jonathan Brooks. I was on the Jonathan Brooks hype train when he was a recruit, and everybody had him. Oh, he's a throwaway guy. No. But no way. Even Sark yesterday didn't even mention him. They got their top 3 dogs, and Brooks will factor in as he can factor in. But
wide receiver is an interesting one. Kelvonte Dixon, Dayon Harrison, Troy O'Meara, Jaden Alexis, Casey Kane.
I think Troy. I'm sorry. I thought you were throwing it.
No, go for it.
I think Troy O'Meara, if he's healthy, I'll have a little bit of him. I think if Troy O'Meara's healthy, I think that the guys on the team who have seen him say that say he's unstoppable. And so I know he's working his way back right now. People are saying that he's ahead of schedule, and they're expecting him back, and they just think he's gotten really unlucky. And if you just listen to what people around the program have said, I know that whenever he had his big breakout, I forget why we weren't really there around that during those practices. Was that at the beginning of COVID? So that's why we just heard about it, right? and they didn't open him back up again until we got to see O'Meary the second time. We're like, oh, he is really good, but he was banged up a little bit with that knee again. He was hindered with it. He was trying to play through it, and eventually in that first open to all of the fans in the stands, do you remember that? Practice? That's the one that he was going too hard. He was banged up. He should have just taken the time off, and that's when he re-injured it again. And it's felt like just such bad luck for him. But if you just listen to what people say about when he first came in, if he can get back to that, people say that he'll like they say they say he's like a Superman, just impossible to keep off the field. So I would say if he can get back to health, maybe with the wide receivers, I would certainly point to him as far as dudes who are existing players on the roster.
Any of those other names, Anwar, for you just do anything?
I was answering stuff in the chat, to be quite honest with you. Guys had some questions.
Let me give you the names again.
Okay.
So we're talking at the wide receiver position, Kelvontae Dixon, Deion Harrison, Troy O'Meary, Jaden Alexis, Casey Kane. That's the group of receivers currently on campus that don't have carved out roles based on performance from a year ago. I mean,
those are all transfer portal candidates to me.
Yeah, other than O'Meary.
But other than O'Meary, who, his only issue is trying to stay healthy. But everybody else it looks like, they just look at transfer portal candidates. Those look like guys who, for whatever reasons, it just hasn't worked here, and we'll probably examine options, and then we'll see where they are after the spring. And was it I think it was Farrell who said catch yesterday that any coach that should not put out a depth chart. What did he say after like the top two guys? Like they really shouldn't do the depth chart anymore because it just gives guys ammunition to go into the transfer portal because they know for sure where they rank. So he's like, I don't, doesn't make any sense to do it anymore. Who was chiming in?
Oh no, I'm sorry. That was such an interesting point to me. I kind of made a vocalization.
Oh no, that's okay. Yeah, but it was an interesting point because it was like when you start putting out a depth chart after the spring and like, here's our final depth chart. Then the guy's like, I'm here. He's like, it doesn't even make sense to do it anymore.
I would maybe add Jaden Alexis. He's got to get healthy, of course. He's not even healthy right now. I think if he's healthy, he has the type of talent to be a contributor. But as Anwar said, he's not healthy. He's from Florida, so that makes, anytime it's a guy is away from home, that makes him more likely to be a transfer candidate. But I think talent-wise, if he can get healthy, he could be a factor on this offense. But mostly I tend to agree with Anwar that those are transfer portal candidates. Yeah.
I would go one step further and say at this point, in my mind, those guys will, other than O'Meary, who weird on his college tombstone right now, too good to keep off the field, too hurt to get on it, right? Like he's a walking conundrum of what you think he can do versus what he's able to do. The rest of those guys eventually will portal out. This is for Dixon and Harrison, this is their third season now. They'll be going into year 3, and they haven't been able to carve out a niche, and either they just want to stay at Austin forever, or they'll, I think at some point, want to explore their possibilities. Kind of unfair for Alexis and Kane, who are literally just redshirt freshmen, to throw them into that category. I don't know. I wonder where they fit in. I wonder how much they're Tom Herman guys. I wonder, when you look at Brennan Thompson coming in and Isaiah Nayer, those guys are skipping guys. They will come in and they'll skip ahead of guys. And, I think those guys that are getting skipped, man, it better happen fast or it probably won't happen at all.
Other thing too with that catch is that I think Sark has made it pretty clear from a roster construction standpoint, there's too many receivers, scholarship receivers on this roster. Even mentioned a little bit of that yesterday, not saying the receiver position, but if he can cut out 3 or 4 of those guys, I think he'd be okay with that. They've
onward. So you have currently, here's an interesting one, pop quiz for everybody. How many scholarship receivers are currently on the roster? Just give me a number. In your head, without thinking too hard about it, how many do you think are there?
14.
What about you, Jason?
Without even thinking about it, 12.
Alex?
I can't not think about it.
Turn your brain off.
What is it? 10.
There's 11, and that includes Brennan Thompson and Savion Red. What's interesting, Anwar, is they very quietly did gut the wide receiver room. So they only have 9 guys that will be there in the spring, and a couple of those guys are hurt. So your scholarship wide receivers going into the spring, Marcus Washington, Jordan Whittington, Dixon, Harrison, O'Meary, Worthy, Nair, Alexis, and Kane. And who are the guys that are hurt? You obviously O'Meary,
and Alexis.
Jaden Alexis.
So you have 7 guys in the spring that will be fully good to go and able to participate. That's not even that's barely a 2 deep on a 3 receiver set. They have very quietly accomplished, and they're maybe next year's wide receiver class may be big because they'll have if they lose 2 or 3 guys into the portal, suddenly it could be a pretty big receiver class to get you back up to the 11, 12. I don't know what the sweet.
They're going to have to go big in numbers, and they're probably going to have to recruit nationally.
Yeah. It's interesting, Anwar. I think the same thing. I keep thinking they got to blow out the receiver room. And in reality, they got like 3 or 4 guys that were like, oh, yeah, those guys are all going to be the guys that play. And then there's 5 that we don't know about. And then there's just like a couple of true freshmen back there. They've got
where they started, to your point, where they started probably before the season, and now it's probably 2 different numbers.
It was like 16 or 15 a year ago. And now they've been able to cut it down considerably, and it wasn't because they all graduated as seniors. Alex, I don't know if you heard him talk about the tight end position, Sarkeesian, yesterday, but he brought up Billingsley. Seemed to want to talk about Billingsley quite a bit, just in general. I mean, kind of brought up Billingsley on his own. But then he mentioned being really interested in the guys they already have. Mm-hmm. And Gunnar Helms, Jatavian Sanders, Braden Liebrock, all those guys, 3 national prospects. Juan Davis, a really crazy athletic guy that didn't come in with a lot of fanfare, but also really talented. I think all 4 of those guys can play. It's the exact opposite of the wide receiver position. I think that all 4 of those guys, pending health, and it was interesting, good to hear that Liebrock will be a guy that sounds like will be a full go in the spring. That's a really, on paper, dynamic set of young players for them to work through and figure out with.
Yeah, and also just how they're going to all align, because Jaleel Billingsley, when I went back and watched his tape, I guess a couple of weeks ago for a column that was just taking me forever, and Ketchum, you rightly told me, you're like, dude, pull the plug on this film work. You've already done 5 games. I was going to do every game of the season, but like it taken me to like Thursday before I'd even gotten my call, and I'm like, Ketch, I'm sorry, man. This is taking forever.
I've been counting reps.
Yeah, but anyway, when you looked at Jaleel Billingsley, the way that Sark used him, he used him basically in the exact same as far as an alignment scheme that he used Cade Brewer, which was basically 65 to 70% of the time at the H-back, about 20% of the time split out, and about only 10 to 15% of the time in line, right? And so if we look at last year, we know that Cade Brewer's gone. Jaleel Billingsley is going to come in. I'm pretty confident he's going to take over the role that Cade Brewer played, right? Jared Wiley is going to play his role, which is the one role. I'm sorry. Gunnar Helm is going to come in and play the Jared Wiley role, which was 65, 70% in line, right? Because that's how they used Gunnar Helm last year, basically as the dude that backed up the guy that played into Jared Wiley's old role, right? So no Cade Brewer, no Jared Wiley. Where does that leave Jatavian Sanders? Where does that leave Juan Davis? And if you just look, only 29 snaps last year for Jatavian Sanders, only 23 snaps last year for Juan Davis. Jatavian was actually in line 60% of the time, split out only 7% of the time, and at H-back 35% of the time. So Jatavion Sanders actually played a role a little similar to what Gunnar Helm was. I do think, though, that if you just look at his skill set, what a natural receiver that he could be. It feels like maybe him and Juan Davis both could be guys who maybe line up more in the kind of split out kind of slot weapon role. Maybe they could carve out sort of a new kind of archetype than we saw last year, where it was just basically Cade Brewer and Jared Wiley that played all of the snaps, with one guy being your inline guy and one guy being your sort of move guy. I don't know how it's going to work, but whenever at the press conference yesterday, he did make sure to mention those three guys for sure, and saying that he's very interested in still getting them all playing time. I just don't know exactly how it's all going to shake out.
Anwar, any thoughts on those tight ends as a group? Because none of them had big roles a year ago. Mm-hmm. But I think unlike a lot of the positions that we'll talk about, I think we all feel like they could. Any of those guys could play for me this year. And I'd go, yeah, okay, I get it. It's just a matter of which ones do.
You know, the most interesting thing about the tight end conversation to me is really it's Jatavion Sanders. I mean, that's the thing that, you know, when you talked about earlier about you're always getting questions about certain guys and Jatavion being one of them, you would have thought, okay, you've got Gunnar Helm, you've got, you know, like you said, Juan Davis, you've got Jatavion. Two of those guys for sure got praise, Gunnar and Juan for their development last year. Jatavion as well. So you would have thought, okay, they're set as far as that room is concerned, and then they bring in Jaleel Billingsley, and you go, all right, well, that's probably the guy you're probably targeting as a potential starter, and it just make you're wondering, like, okay, what's going on with Jatavion? What's going on that development from a 5-star like that? That should be the guy, that is the guy to beat in the room. And it still may be. Like, we're not going to discount him and say it's not. But you would have thought of all positions that they would probably be set in that position. Alex, how much last year? How much 12 personnel did they run? Do you know?
Yeah. So last year, total on the season, they ran 12 personnel. 39% of the time. A lot
of that was dictated by injury, though, with guys like Whittington and Joshua Moore's situation. I mean,
probably, but I mean, I think that they would have all. I mean, I think they I think it'll be the same. They have tight ends that they're going to want to play. I mean, this year too, right? Don't you think? Mm-hmm. I think they'll probably be at 12. I mean, do you think it'll be less than 30? I think maybe 35% would be what I would put the over-under on for next year.
What was Cade's snap number like, Alex?
As far as just his overall participation on the season, mm-hmm. He played 89.13% of snaps.
Almost all of them.
Not 90. Not 90 on our 89.13.
I love that Alex was able to answer Anwar's question about 12 personnel there wasn't a pause.
No, he's on the fly.
Anwar asked the question, and Alex jumped in with a complete sentence of answering the question. That's why he's Alex Dunlap. All right, guys, this is where I think it gets really interesting. Offense and defensive lines. If Angelau he's a starter, and if we think Majors is absolutely a starter, in part because until Robertson gets in, there's no other players listed as centers on the depth chart at this point, at least on our scholarship board. I mean, they may have somebody there. I'll give you the names. Christian Jones, Isaiah Hookfin, Carrick, Jalen Garth, Logan Parr. I don't feel like we've said his name a lot so far during his career. Hayden Connor, Max Merrill. Jones, Hookfin, Carrick, Garth, Parr, Connor, Merrill. Alex, I'll go to you first. Light switches. Who would you hope for from that group?
Well, are we considering Hayden Connor as a guy who the light switch already came on, or
no?
Okay,
I'm penciling two guys into the starting lineup. And then these other guys have to carve out some sort of roles for themselves. I'm wondering how high some of these guys can bounce up in theory.
Oh, I mean, I think Hayden Connor is one of the put him in with the freshmen that are coming in. As far as don't put a cap on him. He's smart as a whip. He's got good feet. He's got great natural strength, good core strength, good enough balance. And he's a guy that got better through the course of the season. He got better through the course of every practice. You could tell Coach Flood loves him. So is it going to be hard to fend off these younger players? Yeah, dude, it's going to be hard. But I think if any of those guys are capable of doing it, Hayden Connor would be the easy pick for me.
Jason, anybody just jump out from that group?
I'm not even fully sure. You're saying like guys that I think can be impact players of that group?
I mean, yeah, guys. I lump Christian Jones.
Yeah, I think Christian Jones, Carrick, and probably Hayden Connor. Read me the list one more time. If you don't mind.
You've got Jones, Carrick, Garth, Parr, Connor, and Merrill.
Yeah, I'd take 3 of them as probably guys that'll be on your 2 deep. And with all due respect to the other guys, I think they're going to have a hard time. Guys like Merrill and Garth and even Logan Parr, I think those guys are going to have a hard time cracking the 2 deep.
They have less scholarship offensive linemen in the spring than they do wide receivers. That's crazy.
That group of
that's only if Hookman doesn't play, right? Because they have 9 if Hookman doesn't play. Is that right?
I mean,
9 scholarship guys in the spring, I think.
They've got 4 tackles, 4 guards, and a center in the spring that are on scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't count. They've got 1 early enrollee from
Cole. Right.
That's right. So
so that's 10. But Hookman might not be playing in the spring because of the motorcycle wreck. We probably need to figure that out.
Although he wasn't mentioned yesterday amongst the guys that Sarkeesian considered injured.
Oh, so right.
Hopefully for him, obviously it looked bad, but hopefully by the time they get to the spring, they think he's a guy. I mean, I guess at this point, Sarkeesian would indicate he's a full participant in the offseason. Like, didn't he say yesterday he wasn't talking about spring ball? He was talking about the offseason and guys that were limited.
He only mentioned Alexis, O'Meary, and Malik Murphy was the only 3 that he touched on. So,
just something to think about. If you're out there, Isaiah Hookfin, hang in there. Keep getting better. That was a nasty-looking accident, and glad that, you're seemingly further ahead than maybe we would have hoped a couple of weeks ago when that thing first popped up. That's great news. I'll throw this to all 3 of you. Hookfin, are we anybody? I mentally skip over Hookfin when I think about guys that I have reasonable expectations to make an impact this year. Could the light switch still come on, Alex?
For Isaiah Hookfin?
Yeah.
It's just where do you? Is he a guard or is he a tackle? That's one thing. He's played it both. Isaiah Hookfin only played. He played 13 snaps last season. Jalen Garth played more snaps than Hook last season. Logan Parr played more snaps than Hook did last season. So, whenever he came in, what did we like about him? We said that he had terrific feet. He was another one of these guys. When I got to kind of talk with him and everything as a recruit, I did a recruiting profile on him. I thought he was just another dude who I just thought was, so smart, really, really mature guy. I'm a fan of Isaiah Hookfin. He feels like he hasn't found a place he hasn't found a position on the offensive line where we thought he might be a right tackle. We weren't sure. He ended up playing more right guard than really any other spot. And if you just look at the guards, it's like I have a hard time thinking that he's going to overtake healthy Hayden Connor. Now you have Neto coming in, Cole Hudson's coming in, who's actually good. People should go watch Cole Hudson. I mean, I keep coming back to this offensive line class, but go have some fun this morning if you're snowed in and just go watch Cole.
His feels fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, I watched it. I just said, now talk about Pancake Factory. This is obscene. So look, there's a lot of good players and a lot of these guys that have the tackle guard versatility. I'm not saying that I can't come on for Hook, but I think it could come on for any of these guys. But it feels like so far he's been a little bit of a victim of circumstance for sure.
Anwar, I look at the offensive linemen that we just discussed, and some of those guys feel like, even though the numbers are not where I think the cavalry's coming clearly in the form of the freshman class. I mean, the scholarship numbers was close to double, it seems like. But some of those dudes look like portal candidates to me too. I mean, some of those names, I don't know when they ever play.
I mean, it's the tough part about that, Catch, is they're definitely portal candidates. I just don't know where they end up once they go into the portal. Is the tough part. But yeah, I mean, there definitely are some guys. But you talk about the cavalry coming. You talk about bringing in 7 of your own guys who are elite prospects, right? We're not talking about just run of the mill, developmental guys. They all need some development, but overall, you're talking about guys, 2 guys that are kind of 5 stars, and then a bunch of 4 stars, and that are mixed in there, and even is Cole is he a 3 or 4?
4.
Oh, he's got to be
He's a Rivals 250 member. So I mean,
Okay, so
Robertson was the only 3.
Robertson, okay, that's the one I was thinking of, right? So, and so that's like the only guy that you say, all right, that's the quote unquote developmental guy. You look at other guys that say, if I say developmental from an offensive line standpoint, I'm talking about within 2 years as opposed to like 3. So yeah, there are a lot of guys who probably this will be their last spring to really make an impact and really do something with new staff. And then if they don't do it in the spring, by the time the summer rolls around, it's a wrap at that point. It's going to be about how do we get the young guys going and how do we get the young guys developed and these young guys reps in training camp and push the older guys, who they didn't recruit, so they don't have any loyalties to, those guys that will get pushed to the side.
Matthew's asking about Tyler Johnson. Tyler Johnson's no longer in the Texas program. And Jason, curiously enough, he hasn't ended up anywhere either, has he? Have you remember seeing his name anywhere?
I don't really track him once they enter the portal. I mean, I'm not hitting him up, hey, where are you going? But no, you would think it would be, usually we'll see it reported, oh, he's going to this school. I have not seen anything on where Tyler Johnson has landed. So
I wonder if he's done playing football.
What an enigma that's weird.
It is weird. The defensive line, no reason to bring up the likes of Coburn, a Jomo, Sweat, Byron Murphy. Like, we know what those guys are. Just focusing on the other guys in the program. Myron Warren, Vernon Broughton, Sawyer Gorham Welch. And those are, and then you've got like Prince Dorba, Sorrell, the redshirt guys from a year ago, DJ Harris, Jordan Thomas, David Abiria. Like, there's actually some guys in there that I have hopes for that haven't really popped up yet. Anybody that wants to jump in. Is there, from that group of defensive linemen, any hopes that guys from that group become integral members of what they get out of the defensive line this year?
Oh, I mean, I could look. I mean, Vernon Broughton is, he plays over the defensive tackle, and he'll be a member of the 2 deep. I think he'll be a member of the 2 deep this year, the same way that he was to end last season. If you kind of look at his snap participation, it always fell somewhere between, I guess, on the season overall, like 21% snap participation. But he's a guy who is going to, I think, probably see an uptick as far as those snaps. I think for Sawyer Gorham Welch, it'll be a little bit. What am I missing something? I feel like
a little streaker action at Almar's zone.
Freaking kids running around with their underwear behind us. It's the second one.
I might have been
God bless snow days.
Jeez. So first I got a kid and one youngest in his underwear. Now I got the oldest rolling down in his underwear.
Why those boys some clothes on more? I think these things called pajamas on more.
They think it's too hot. They don't want to wear them. Sorry, Alex.
No, I was just gonna say, Catch mentioned Sawyer Gorham Welch. I just think it'll be hard for him to. He played a lot at nose tackle this year, and I mean with Byron Murphy there, Keandre Coburn there, T'Vondre Sweat plays at both the tackle and the nose. I think that'll be hard. Catch, did you mention Alfred Collins at all? Because that feels like the one to me.
I didn't put him in the mix mainly because I think we all expect that he's. It's strange. Look, they'll have. They're currently slated to have 20 defensive linemen on campus in the fall. So You know, we talk about the 2 deep, but you've got Coburn, Ojomo, Sweat, Collins, Murphy. Like, that's 5 right there.
Mhm.
And then you've got 15 other guys coming in: Finley, Tapp, Swanson, Burke, Bledsoe, Bryant, Christopher Ross. And then, you know, we talk about the redshirt guys from a year ago: Jordan Thomas, DJ Harris. Like, there's a lot of guys there. At some point, I guess survival of the fittest kicks in, and there's going to be some bad dudes in that group. And then there are going to be maybe some pretty good players that just can't get their head above water in terms of playing time. I mean, if you've got 20 on campus, you're going to have at least 10 plus that just aren't getting the snaps they want week in and week out.
Well, that's rich folks' problems, man. Right? Got too many.
We just got too many defensive linemen.
Yeah, dude. Jeez.
Words that I don't think we've ever said on this podcast or in anything that we've ever done in the last 20 years. Just too many defensive linemen to count. Anwar, we keep talking about portal, and that 20 dudes, somebody's got to leave unhappy.
There's going to be a lot of people leaving unhappy. I mean, this, you know, you don't want to do portal watch kind of things, but when the second wave of free agency begins after spring ball, you can start looking at the obvious candidates because there are guys in there that you're going to say, like, there's just not enough reps to go around. There just won't be. And again, you're still going to have a group of young guys who are going to try to hold on a second. Hey, just be quiet. I told you this before, all right?
Jason's definitely enjoying that more than anybody.
I heard some background noise in my house, but it's like off in the other room, so I'm sequestered for now.
Anwar, we can't hear it if it makes you feel any better.
Well, the hard part is I'm trying to formulate my thoughts.
Well, yeah.
And I'm freaking hearing like da 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 crumple 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 da da crumple crumple That's what I'm hearing in the freaking background. Let's fucking just stay over there, man. I swear. I'm gonna lock him in a room. Just gonna lock him in a room. All right. Anyway, speaking of transfer portal, anyone want 2 kids? I'll put them in the freaking portal as well. Yes, it's just, but yes, to wrapping up my point, which I don't know if I ever had one. Just to be honest with you, these little MFers out here, there's going to be so much Calgary that is coming through at some point that it's just fuck.
I'll save you, Anwar. You just take a breath and we'll move on. I'll just say
some rogue products right now.
It's almost hard to move on. The interesting thing, real quick, Alex, about the defensive line numbers is they're scheduled to have 20 in the fall. If nothing else happens, 20. Only 3 are seniors. So 17 guys and only 15 of the 20 are either sophomores or freshmen, which is crazy. So
it will be 20. I'm with Anwar. After spring football, some of those guys are going to see the writing on the wall, and I think defensive line will be a large.
Yeah.
We'll be watching that group closely for transfer portal.
You start talking about the glut that needs to clear its way out to get under the 85-man limit later in the year. They could probably get it just along the defensive line with no other position. That's a lot. I don't know that I've ever stopped and looked at it. That's a lot of guys, especially when you consider they'll have, if the offensive line, I guess it's not too crazy, but man, that's a lot of dudes. Linebacker, okay.
Catch, just let me say just real quick too. I just thought about Baron Sorrell last year was a dude who kind of popped a little, but he was exposed for a lack of strength, like through the course of getting more and more playing time. I just remember saying it, put a pin in this and remember in the offseason, Baron Sorrell, if he could put on strength, like we saw a lot of flashes out of him. So I think he's another guy who might be a kind of a light bulb candidate this year.
Linebacker is an interesting one because they have 9 guys on campus for the spring. And it feels like most Jaden Hullaby and Maurice Blackwell are like the two guys that haven't played.
Well, Blackwell played because they put in that special package for him at the end of the season. Because he played safety in the Rice game or one of those first games wherever they put in the backups. But then towards the end of the season, remember, he started coming in on that third down package where they had the 6 DBs in there, and they had him in there as a coverage linebacker. But it would only be on third downs. They would do it maybe like 6 times a game through the course of the last 3 or 4 games of the season. So maybe that could be a role that he could at least kind of say that maybe he's looking, forward to playing. It certainly is a very, very limited role for sure. But he definitely got more game action this year on defense than a guy like Hullaby.
Anwar, I'm going to give you 5 guys. I think I know the answer for you to this question, maybe because of the draft that we did last week, although maybe I'm wrong and this guy ended up with somebody else. Devon Richardson, Jalen Ford, David Benda, Hullaby, and Blackwell. If one of those 5 takes a massive step forward, it becomes like a legitimate play in and play out first guy in the lineup at linebacker kind of player. Is there anybody from that 5 that really jumps out at you?
Again, I would need some of the numbers, but I would guess Benda off the top of my head as a guide. And Alex, you probably have some of his productivity per snaps, handy. Benda would be the guy that, jumps out to me. Devon Richardson, it seems to be a guy that's probably going to get lost on the depth chart going forward. And then, Blackwell, I believe, was somewhat productive. But Alex, do you have those numbers?
Yeah. So as far as what, just their snap percentages, or just like how
it's like not even percentages, but you have the productivity.
Yeah. So Jalen Ford, just as far as the production once every 10.32 snaps. David Benda with production once every 8.77 snaps. That just doesn't seem right. So, but it felt like Ford was so much more productive by the eyeball test, but maybe it's just the fact that Ford was on the field so much more. 343 total snaps on defense last year versus David Benda, 193 total snaps on defense last year. But David Benda, from a pure productivity standpoint, was a little bit more effective while he was on the field than was Jalen Ford.
Gotcha.
Anybody else? I mean, we move through this process pretty quickly. None of those guys jump out to me. If you're like one of those guys is going to be among the best 5 starting linebackers in the Big 12 at their position, I don't see it.
Well, don't they jump out to you as guys who will have to start, right? I mean,
if they don't go and get an answer in the portal,
one of them is going to have to start. I mean, Jalen or Benda's going to have to start, right? I mean, is Brockermeyer's going to be hurt all spring? I mean, he's not going to. Are they going to just keep on putting him back in even once he's back healthy? I don't know. It's DeMarvion and who?
It's an obvious weakness for me on this team.
Yeah.
Well, I think Sark mentioned it yesterday at his press conference, so they know they've got work to do there.
I mean, I don't view though. I mean, maybe a little bit weak, but I don't view it as just a. It's a glaring, glaring egregious hole. It feels like maybe Catch is one of those things wherever, the pieces don't seem that good, but since there are a few of them, maybe it's one of these situations where one guy just kind of pops up and kind of surprises folks and could be a little bit more effective than we give him credit for possibly being.
And real quickly on the DBs, we don't have to we'll wrap up, take some questions, and get this thing wrapped up for the day. On the DB front, I mean, if we separate Cook, Jameson, Barron, and Thompson away from the other guys, and we say Crawford, Coffee, which doesn't seem fair because he's a true sophomore, Jameer Johnson. I'm a little surprised that that Crawford has never quite had the light switch come on. I really thought he'd be a guy that would have been in that first group as guys that you'd be counting on for heavy minutes, and it doesn't feel like we're doing that yet with him.
He'd be the one that I would, if I'm picking one from that group that's going to take that next step, it would be Keaton Crawford.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's ultra athletic. He's a speed guy. I mean, he can be a true cornerback for you. I'm not throwing in the towel yet on Keaton Crawford. Yeah. So.
And his body makeup is a lot more substantial than you would think. I wouldn't be surprised to find out he's one of these guys that has some of the explosive kind of workout numbers and stuff, because he's a rocked up dude who looks really good out there.
Mm-hmm.
Any other final thoughts on kind of this roster discussion? Nope. All right. Well, then we'll move on. Let's just do some questions. We'll start with this one. How do you guys see the quarterback room?
Oh, who wants to take that? Huh?
I see it about like everybody else does. I feel like the quarterback room looks like I would say I would be shocked if Quinn Ewers isn't the starting quarterback to start next season, and I think that he's going to have to show it. He's going to have to prove it, but it feels like that's kind of the way it's going to be, and that kind of the rest of the stuff that we see between then will be kind of how the pecking order goes after that. That would be my guess.
You don't bring in Quinn Ewers, a generational talent, the number one player, regardless of which class you put him in, to sit the bench, especially behind a quarterback that was benched last year and struggled mightily against decent competition. They'll make it interesting. They'll have a quarterback battle in the spring, but I don't see any way it's not Quinn Ewers. And I think, Ketch, maybe you've said, and maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I am, but I think you said maybe you thought Hudson would start the season opener. Am I wrong about that?
No, I think Ewers. I think he starts the spring. I think he goes to the spring.
Oh, okay, the spring. Okay,
position.
Yeah. Okay, spring. Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think game one, it's got to be Ewers, because you got to get him some game reps before Alabama comes to town. So, yeah, I think you'll have a battle this spring, but I think it's pretty well decided before they ever hit the field, truthfully.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I mean, it just kind of is what it is. And, I think, Ketch has made this point before, but when, Hudson probably finishes at the Macomb school, you probably think, okay, that's probably the time when he exits. Then it's probably Quinn and Malik at that point. And then, then it'll be up to Sarkeesian to kind of, put more into that room. But, I think the best thing Hudson can do is just get some more reps, and that's and continue to learn. But yeah, I don't see him starting in week one.
I mean, as we already said, Sarkeesian's got 3 years. Fair or not fair, he's going to be judged by what happens in the Quinn Ewers era, and I don't know that he's going to waste a lot of time. I mean, if that's the case, you need to get the guy on the field and let him go through whatever growing pains he has, because ultimately at the end of 2023, whatever's happened with Quinn Ewers, I think people will be drawing some massive conclusions from what happens with Sark based on what happens at everybody that knows Quinn Ewers. Everybody around the sport seems to think he has his eyes on the 2024 draft. So get what you can while you can. And I don't know that I think Hudson Card, a little bit of collateral damage. He'll just kind of get into the way. This is an interesting question, Anwar. I hadn't thought about it, but who's going to get the first interview with Quinn Ewers? He says my money is on Anwar. I tend to think either you have $50,000 or you're going to have to wait until the SID just makes him available.
Ain't nobody interviewing that guy, because unless it's an NIL deal, that's something like that. If Ketch, you want to do an NIL deal with him,
I can't afford him.
Yeah.
No, so outside of that, I mean, I don't. It's once guys get on campus, it becomes kind of a huge no-no for them to conduct media interviews unless the SID office brings them down for an interview. So that time is done. We may speak to him in the spring, maybe after the spring game. There's a possibility they make him available. It's a possibility. If not, we may have to wait until the fall. But
I bet they let us have him in the spring once.
I think after the spring game, potentially.
Because
Hudson's the number one guy, right?
Yeah.
Dude, even Bianco could. If Ewers is out there and he is even taking some kind of snaps with the ones, even Bianco, the maniacal tyrant that he is, couldn't keep.
Alex,
I mean, just the complete despot that he is. He could not keep. He could not keep Quinn Ewers away from the media. Well, I'm just saying what's true.
None of us are ever going to get a Christmas card from Bianco.
I wouldn't want a Christmas card from
been
Bianco.
That bad in a long time. Be nice.
I tend to agree.
And he wants all practices open all the time, man. He's going to rail on him until that happens.
Hey, Alex, I have one for you here because I had to rewire my brain a little bit to think about this. What are the chances that O'Meary, Nair, and Worthy are the starting 3 wide receivers and Jay Witt gets some run at safety? I don't think he's moving to safety, but there's a world where if O'Meary could get healthy, they could always move Worthy back into the slot, which is where he started before they realized they didn't want him and Jordan Whittington kind of keeping one guy off the field for the other. They wanted to get both of those guys on the field. I tend to think that Whittington's for sure a starter, but if O'Meary is special and can stay healthy, and he's a guy you have to have on the field, then is Whittington the odd man out in this hypothetical world where you're starting, you got to pick 3?
No, you don't have to pick 3 because even if you outside of Xavier Worthy last year that played like 86% of snaps, I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be like that. I mean, these guys, they'll rotate in these other receivers. I think that they would, in certain looks, I think you get a completely different thing out of a healthy O'Meary than you do out of like a Jordan Whittington. You get if the defense is giving you looks where you can maybe take advantage of those matchups, I think it would just kind of be dependent on that stuff. I'm not sure that you would need to have your set starting 3. I think if you have your set starting, I think that probably Nair and Worthy would probably be. I don't know. It just depends if O'Meary's healthy, But I think that all those guys could be healthy, 55% contributors, and that was the most anybody had last year outside of Xavier Worthy.
Didn't Washington play 75% of snaps this year?
No, Marcus Washington played. No, he played towards the end of the season. He was playing basically starting at the Iowa State game. From then on, it was 77% of snaps, 96% of snaps, 95% of snaps, 97% of snaps. So you're thinking about the trend to end the season, Catch, but on the season for the total, it was 52%.
And that number we think probably all goes down this year, right?
Yeah, but I did, Sark did mention he did name drop him, saying that he was expecting a little bit of a jump for Marcus Washington. So he's a guy I guess we could consider, as still being in the plans, but you got to see that number come down just based on the other.
He's the most disrespected guy in the program.
Yeah,
and he's going to end up playing more snaps, I think, than any of us think.
Kind of like Marcus Johnson or something, right? Just the guy the same first name, kind of the same attitude from fans, but the dude who just kept playing. A dude who's still collecting NFL paychecks, by the way.
Well, Marcus Johnson had that game again. So eventually Marcus Johnson was a very popular player, probably played in the wrong era of Texas football. Better quarterbacks and better offenses would have seen that guy put up big numbers. Yeah. Here's one. Does Lincoln Riley's strategy of focusing on transfers instead of transition class become the new norm for new coaches, assuming the portal continues to flourish and offer starters at multiple positions?
To some degree. I think every coach that moves is going to try to use the portal to some degree, but I think Lincoln has his situation is a little more unique. He's leaving a national powerhouse, going to what should and could be another national powerhouse, and just Lincoln Riley's name, especially offensive guys, are so attached to Lincoln Riley. That's why you're seeing them follow him to USC. I think Lincoln Riley's a unique situation, but yeah, every coach is going to try to use that to some degree, but I don't think they'll have the success that Lincoln Riley did this year.
Even if they don't have that success, by the way, it's an excellent question, Paul. The transfer portal is eliminating excuses, and I think the transfer portal is eliminating kicking the can down the road, whether it's not Lincoln Riley, but even it's Michigan State, and maybe they don't have the name cachet, but you can still say you can build through the portal. And so you may not get a bunch of 5 stars, but you can find guys who are better than the guys that are currently on the roster. There's really no excuse. There's a billion guys in the portal right now, and there's only a small percentage of them that are signed. So yeah, at the whole transition class, we got here late. We don't know what to do. Like, let's sign 3 guys. Like, I think those days are over, man.
All right, I know we're up against it because Jason's got to leave in a second.
I got a bit more time, so go ahead. But yeah.
There are 2 more questions I wanted to take before we go into parting shots.
Wow,
this one I think is a one for you and me, Jason. Thoughts on Terrence Gibbs going to Georgia Southern? Seemed like an interesting landing spot for him. You and I talked about this yesterday.
Yeah. Well, first off, that was a Stan Drayton evaluation. Once Stan left Austin, I checked in yesterday or the day before to see if there was any contact from Texas. No, none. That was a Stan Drayton evaluation. They brought him in for an official visit, and it would appear to have been a poor evaluation by Stan Drayton if he wound up going to Georgia Southern. I mean, I think he had a Texas hat on the table, maybe a Florida hat, and one other one, and then Georgia Southern, and he wound up picking Georgia Southern. And he's another guy. He's a guy who dealt with some injuries, so his stock fell off a little bit, but little surprise.
Something weird there. That
why
guy
didn't he offer? I'm sorry, but why didn't he offer? Why didn't he offer him at his new job?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't even, he might have, Alex. I don't know, but it's a good question. Why didn't he wind up at?
Yeah.
I don't know. So.
I don't know. That was certainly an interesting one. And the final question, I've kind of saved it. The Jimbo Fisher, sideshow from yesterday. It was weird. There were a lot of people nationally who saw that rant and were like, "Look at Jimbo Fisher go!" Like, yeah, way to take a stand. I was a little, I don't know. I just had more questions about it than answers probably exist. Anwar, thoughts on Jimbo from yesterday?
I mean, I'm fine with what he said because I'm just tired of everyone just complaining. You know, I'm tired of people talking about. You know, I'm tired of hearing Texas fans talk about how much A&M is paid. I'm tired of A&M fans talking about what Texas is playing for, offensive linemen. Like, listen, like, this is the system. This is what's out here. Like, this is the legal way of doing stuff. And yes, you are legally paying players. And if you aren't doing it and you're falling behind, so that's just life, man. The shit just happens. I mean, people have complained about the Yankees, Jason would know, for years. But, yes, if the Yankees and the Red Sox find ways to be successful, then you become the Tampa Bay Rays. And you say, all right, we can't afford to pay guys, but we've got other ways that we can find ways to be successful and be effective. But
that's paying them once they're on campus through NIL deals is different. You can't use that as I say that, and Texas has the pancake.
I mean, Texas used that as a recruiting too. I mean, the pancake factory came out just
the week of signing day.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, like, Banks magically flips. I mean, like, everybody just got, to me, the people just being real bitches about the whole situation. Look, this is the new system. It's the new world. Get used to it. And if your school and your program isn't doing it, get your weight up and find ways to pay the guys that you want. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, hell, Jackson State found a way to get an NIL deal for a guy. Like, come on. Like, you can make it happen if you want.
One of the interesting parts of that to me was when he said at the end of his rant, he said, people just mind their own business, basically. Then he stopped himself, and I forgot what he transitioned to, like, do their homework or something like that, but do their research. But he started to say, mind your own damn business, quit butting into whatever I'm doing over here. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But listen, man, I mean, Jimbo Fisher, maybe it's all on the up and up. Maybe it's all NIL deals, but Jimbo's got a history back at Florida State. Some of the assistants on his staff have a history of bending the rules significantly. So would it surprise anybody if, he's facing those questions in large part because of the reputation that he's built over the years.
I mean,
Alex, did you even hear the comments yesterday?
No, man. I was, like I said, I was at practice in the rain all day. Then I flew home, so I missed all that stuff. I'm completely clueless about what was. I'm gonna go watch it now, but no, I didn't see.
Anwar, were you about to say something?
Alex Jimbo just went off on, I think he's offended because basically everyone's just saying that they bought their top class, and no, every coach wants to feel like I recruited well, and that's the reason why guys are coming. But at the end of the day, it's legal. Guys have been getting paid for the longest of time, and hearing other coaches complain, coaches are being bitches right now. They're complaining about NIL deals and transfer portals and all this other type of stuff, man. I'm so tired of hearing different coaches whine. I'm talking about Jimbo, but talking about Kiffin and other guys. Like, I'm just tired of it, man. Like I said, get your weight up, get your boosters and all these other guys who are spending money to have their damn names on buildings and stuff. Tell them I need some players. We don't need another damn building. We need some damn players. And put together your own whatevers and buy your guys. Like, that's the system. This is what it is. Stop bitching about it.
Anwar, the beauty of a 3-minute rant is that there were parts of the rant that I completely agreed with Jimbo, right? Like, Nick Saban does need to be quiet. Like, Nick doesn't get to have an opinion on this, especially and as he pointed out, in August, when he was telling everybody that his quarterback had an $800,000 million NIL deal, it was okay then, and now it's not okay. And to hear Lincoln Riley complaining about the portal when his entire career is built on the back of quarterbacks, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams now at USC, like. The transfer portal, and look, we love Lincoln as a coach. Like, we have a lot of respect for what he's accomplished, but it's like, you just signed 12 guys in the portal. What are you complaining about? So I thought Jimbo was right that some of the guys chirping come from schools that have a history. Like, Alabama can't complain about other people paying players. And Nick Saban can go off into pretend land where all of those number one classes were just built on their coaches recruiting. Well, come on. And I think this was the point about Jimbo's rant that, to me, was the elephant in the room. Alex, he thought it was absolutely preposterous and insulting. And how dare anybody suggest that a single kid in that A&M recruiting class made a decision based on any financial benefit they may have received. How dare? It's insulting to the players and the coaches. How dare they? However, if anybody really wants to know, Jimbo let us know that he has dirt on all of the other schools. Like, if we really want to pull back the curtain, we can talk about situations. He said, I know schools that have cheated, and we want to talk about it. Let's talk about it. And it was like, okay, so Jimbo's telling us that all of the other schools in the country are cheating and doing things illegally, but don't ask questions about his number one class. It is, for me, Anwar, the dirty little thing that nobody wants to say is like, this is what the whole sport's about. And correct. Jimbo's right. He shouldn't be the only guy answering questions, but you can't say out of one side of your mouth, nothing to see here, and on the other side of your mouth say, whole bunch of stuff to see over there.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, at the end of the day, let's just keep it a buck. These coaches have been paying guys under the table for years and years and years. And again, coaches have been able to kind of control this thing, right? And all this thing is about control. Everything about transfer portal, it's about control, right? The whole conversation is about being these are coaches who were raised in an era, Catch, where if a guy wanted to leave and transfer, they would blackball them and say, you can't go to this conference, you can't go to this conference, you can't go to these schools, and the best you can do is go to a small corner somewhere. And that's what you can do. That's what they're used to. And now the transfer portal doesn't give them control. NIL stuff, all of a sudden, beforehand, they had their own little bagmen, and they were able to kind of control it. Now they've got other programs who are like, oh, yeah, we'll go ahead and put together a group. and now they can't control it. They're bitching about not being able to control stuff, but they act like guys were never getting paid. Just never getting paid before, and this is a brand new thing, and they're clutching their pearls. Jimbo's right. It's a lot of hypocrisy right now, and guys should just be quiet and don't act like, don't cast those stones, because, he understands. Jimbo knows where the bodies are buried, and Jimbo's basically letting you guys and let everybody know, I know what's been going on. Don't mess with me.
All right, guys, we've weirdly gone way longer in today's Modcast than I would have ever guessed that we'd gone, but a lot of stuff to talk about, I guess, the day after signing day. Let's jump into parting shots. Alex, how's the shitter?
Oh, it's a septic. It's an aerobic septic system. It's not. It's a. I'm not sure we're calling it.
We're calling it the shitter.
It's fixed, man. Like what? $1,600. It was $1,675 later because they had to put a new aerator in. They had to pump the whole thing. It's just a mess, man. One thing goes wrong on those systems, and it's like it causes another thing to mess up, and it causes some filter to not filter some kind of solids correctly. And next thing you know, man, things are backing up and they're going haywire. So make sure you keep your septic systems in check. I've signed up now for like a maintenance plan to where there's just going to be a guy that comes out every 3 months, and if something messes up, I'm going to point at him and just say, "Why is it messing up, man? You're supposed to keep this from happening, right?" So, that's fixed. The other news, of course, it's snowing outside. We all have our kids here. I got back from the Senior Bowl just in time. I actually had to change my plans to come home a day early. And like I said, man, as I was flying in, it felt like I was just the last one sort of sliding into home base with just everybody else that was there just looking so dejected with their like Viva Mexico shirts and stuff. They're getting ready to go on vacation. And you could just tell that, they're starting to realize they're not going on vacation as the board was lighting up with cancellations and stuff. But, yeah, anybody that's to travel right now, I certainly feel for you. But great week at the Senior Bowl. I'll have a write-up tonight in the War Room. I talked to Cameron Dicker for an extended period yesterday. He has some interesting thoughts. Also, I'll have some of my thoughts, not too many thoughts on Josh Thompson, but some on him. Also talked to some scouts about a couple of things Longhorn related. So keep an eye out for that tonight in the War Room. So that's probably it for me.
Mr. Suchomel, what do you got for us?
Nothing. Just trying to keep my head above water with I say 4 kids at home, but one of my kids had a sleepover in the neighborhood. I get to make the walk across the neighborhood to go walk her home today because I'm not driving anywhere today. So try to keep my sanity during these snow days. Signing day, obviously yesterday, National Signing Day 2. We talked about this before we went live. The month of February, the entire month of February is a dead period. So going to be a lot different month of February than we've had previously. We used to have junior days in February, things of that nature. Not going to be the case this year. We'll have some 7-on-7 and stuff like that. There'll be other recruiting events for us to cover, but normally we go through National Signing Day 2, and it's like, oh shit, I immediately got to ramp up for just recruiting event after recruiting event. This year, weirdly, we get a bit of a breather in February, so looking forward to that. But like I said, there's a 7-on-7 event in Dallas this week. There's a couple others around the area. So, and then we've got rivals camps coming up. Never ends recruiting, but bye-bye 22 class, hello 2023 class. So on deck.
Jason, I don't know that you have to make the walk. Like, no matter how old the daughter is,
She's
if
10.
there's ever a day where you don't have to worry about protection of your kids,
Yeah.
It's probably today. Like, nobody's out. So, even if someone were going to come for you, they'd probably slip trying to get there.
Yeah.
So I think you're perfectly safe on the streets.
Maybe I'll just tell her, hey, take your chances. You're 10. Just take your chances. Fine. I got 3 other ones. You're good. Come on.
Anwar's like, you need 2 more? Anwar, I'm proud of your sons for keeping it together for this last 30 minutes.
Oh, they already know when that voice goes up. They already know what time it is. They're over there. They know. They know.
We all know.
They made a mistake, but they're not going to do that shit again.
Give us your parting shot.
But first of all, I hope Leander ISD opens back up on Friday. I get the feeling that's probably not going to happen. So get the feeling I'm going to be stuck indoors for at least another day. I'll take him to the movies or something like that tomorrow. You know what? Catch a parting shot and be careful how I say it. But people keep asking. People ask a lot in the chats about BJ Foster. And at the end of the day, it didn't really work out for BJ Foster here at Texas, and going to Sam Houston State probably is a little bit of a surprise. Something that we would consider clearly not on par or definitely not an upgrade from UT. But at the end of the day, for what variety of different reasons, things just didn't work here. So I hope the young man finds success. Hope he finds some happiness there at Sam Houston State. I know what his ultimate goal is, but I would just say to Texas fans, resist on the urge to shit on young men on the way out the door. Like, at the end of the day, it is what it is. And shoulder shrug it, wish him good luck, and hope for the best. But, outside of that, there's probably not much else to say as far as BJ is concerned, other than, good luck at Sam Houston State.
I'm with you, Anwar, man. Barring a guy doing something illegal, right? Like, something horrible, just wish a guy good luck and genuinely hope that best case scenario, wish a guy the best. Don't be a dick about it. I don't understand sometimes. BJ Foster played 40 career games, started 27. That warrants, even if you don't think he played well, doesn't mean it to be an asshole. And sometimes people just go out of their way to be assholes, and I just don't get it. What's wrong with just being nice and decent to a guy and saying that sucks that it didn't quite probably go like he wanted, but here's to him making the most out of it and coming out on the other side. It's almost as if some people want him to come out on the wrong side on the other side, and I don't understand that mentality. I mean, I've never heard someone say BJ Foster's a bad dude. And it's not really his fault that the coaches kept running him out as a starter. I mean, put someone else in if he's not good enough. I don't know. Yesterday, that whole thing rubbed me the wrong way. Now I'll let that be my parting shot, other than to say, Alex, this won't mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of a $1,600 shitter bill, but I am taking my steak dinner from having – because – I don't really know a steakhouse around here to even go waste the money on. I'm taking the $200 from our draft check because I was the big winner last week. I won.
I'm still.
The people have spoken.
Protesting. There's the word I'm looking for.
The people have spoken, and they gave me twice as many votes as you and Anwar combined.
We were goofing on Alex's team, and he got second. It's only because you listen. Anwar and I took a bad strategy. You got Bijan, he got Worthy. That's all anybody cared about. I will stand by in November. My team will be way more productive than y'all's team.
You can take the $200 steak gift certificate, Alex, and either apply it to the shitter or just go have a steak dinner on me in light of this horrible, unexpected bill that you had to swallow.
Look at this. Look at this. That's my favorite parting shot ever, Catch.
Look at those comments. Suk should have won. How did
come on, you people in the comments.
You can't count Terrence Brown saying it twice.
I didn't.
You're the same guy said it twice. And you're like, look at all those people saying I won.
Hey, it's two of them, and then Eric said it's rigged. Come on.
Dude,
all I know is generally people hate me more than the rest of you. And so if I win a poll where people on Orangebloods have legitimately voted for me, I must have easily have had the best.
You could have got Bijan and taken 4 players who are walk-ons, and people would have voted just because you got Bijan. That's what this boiled down to. Bijan and Worthy got the votes. So.
In the end,
strategy worked. Hey,
the 2 top vote getters were me and Alex, and we were the ones that spent whatever it took to get our guys. That's, goes that way.
Longhorn Rider has the best comment. Will Stone will be the GOAT. And that's
Hey, really, real quick,
Longhorn
one
Rider.
more parting shot that's completely non-football related. So the British over in the UK, the British have their own version of the Oscars, and it's called BAFTA. It's like British Arts, I don't know, film, television, whatever. So Denzel Washington today got a snub. He didn't get nominated for a BAFTA for his work in the Shakespeare thing that he was in. What's interesting about that, Denzel Washington has never, for any role in any movie, he's like a 9-time Oscar or 8-time Oscars award. The Brits have not one time ever nominated Denzel Washington for an acting honor in any movie he's ever been in. And to that, I just got to tell the British they got to stop being racist about Denzel Washington.
They're canceled. Just cancel him, Catch. That's crazy. They're canceled.
If you can't give Denzel like a bone, one bone in his entire career, they didn't even nominate him for Training Day. Like at some point, we got to look at what the Brits are doing with their movies and ask some questions. What the hell did Denzel Washington ever do to the United Kingdom where they just won't give him Anwar? Not even like a ball. He's not one time.
What about Idris Elba? Has he been nominated?
Probably because he's British.
I was just curious. I was just curious, is it a British thing or not?
I don't know. All I know is
did they not get like the American kind of acting thing potentially? Like I don't know.
No, it's a Denzel specific thing.
Yeah.
Like
they're canceled.
I don't know. It blew my mind today to see that. I'm talking about things you never know, and then you see and you're like, wait, what? That doesn't even mean anything to me. But I saw that and just thought to myself, how the hell? I mean, you'd never say you'd never think that Meryl Streep never had an acting nomination from any organization. Crazy to me that Denzel Washington has just never been acknowledged by the Brits. Be better, UK. Be better. By the way, just real quick, Rick, you keep asking about Ishmael Ibrahim and his status. Just last thing out the door. There's nothing really new to say with Ishmael Ibrahim. He's currently not in the program. He's dealing with some legal issues. And it'll be interesting to see, A, in time, what happens with those legal issues, and B, how Texas responds to his situation and whether or not they let him back into the program. Right now, he's not in the program. And I don't know that I anticipate him being in the program soon, again, anytime soon, although I don't know. Like, I don't know that any of us know exactly what's going to happen with that situation. But he's got some work to do, I think, before he's a Texas Longhorn again. And on that note, no Pete Brandt. I did not use all of my other accounts and vote for myself. I did vote for myself once, but that's it. For myself, the winner and reigning mod champion, just throw that out there. And for Alex, who gets to reap the benefits of me being the big winner of the mods. Oh, and Anwar and Jason, those guys too. Thanks for watching the Modcast or listening to it or however you consumed it. We appreciate you as always. Get over to orangebloods.com. It looks like weirdly tonight's War Room might be pretty interesting with some of the nuggets that each of us have been able to file away. I'm really interested to see what Alex brought back. He's teased it a couple of times from Mobile. So for all of us, it's been a long week. We're going to go do a little bit more work, and then we're going to hopefully have a pretty quiet weekend. We'll talk to you next week. You guys be good to each other.